Join me in this wondrous video where I make this beautiful wand as featured in the game Hogwarts Legacy. Please consider leaving a like and subscribe, and share this video with friends. It works magic for my channel to reach more Blender sorcerers like yourself. So, whether you're House Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff or Slytherin, let's jump right in. So here we are, and this is the wand that I'm going to be making today. I'm going to make the blue version actually. So that's the reference image I'm going to use, and I drag and drop that into Blender's viewport. And that's now reference image. So let's just put that into place, rotate it 90 degrees on the x-axis so it's facing forward in the front view. And go over to the reference image settings, set the depth to back and turn the perspective off, and also the opacity down, because we don't want that to be too strong in the viewport and get in the way of our editing. With that done, let's just rotate that a little bit there to make it straight. So first things first, let's make a new collection. I'm going to call it Wand. Keep organized, right? Because otherwise it gets really messy later on. And with that done, let's have a look at where we can start off here. So let's add a cylinder, and I'm going to change the sides to 16. And that's going to form the majority of the handle, and there isn't really a pummel, is there, like you get on a sword. So switch over to edit mode anyway while you're doing this, and let's just place that roughly in the middle. And the reason you want to work in edit mode and not object mode is because we don't want to be applying the scale and the rotation later on. And if we forget to do that, then your modifiers are not really going to work as expected. So best to make edits in edit mode and transformations in object mode. So I'm just going to place these approximately where I think they need to be. And then we can start adding edge loop cuts at the key points along that handle. So you can see there in edit mode, we've kept our rotation and scale at the default values, which is really good. I'm going to turn on the selector there, so I don't accidentally select the background image as well. It gets really annoying quickly. So back to edit mode and edge mode, and you can press Ctrl R, of course, to add edge loops, and then slide that along, like I say, at the key points, and just click to place them like that. Hogwarts Legacy is a game that was recently released across the consoles like the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, but also on PC as well. And I've been tempted to buy that. In the meantime, I've watched quite a few videos and reviews really to see if the game's really good, and apparently it is. So it's likely that I will buy the game and give it a shot myself. And in doing that, I thought, well, maybe there's something really cool in the game that I can make for a video. And then I started looking at different gameplay videos, trying to decide and find anything that's really cool. And I decided in the end, a wand would be a good thing to make, and did some research on that. Found some really cool videos on the different types of wands you get in the game, and specifically the different type of handles you get in the game. So as I said earlier on, I'm going to be making, this is called the Celestial wand, and there's two variants, I believe, like a grey version, which you saw earlier, and in fact is the reference image there in the background. But there's also a blue version which I really like, so that's the one I'm going to attempt to make and texture in the second part of this video. So do make sure you come back and see that, it's really cool. So anyway, as you can see there, I've added the loop cuts I wanted and added a subdivision modifier, which obviously makes it very, very smooth. And we just want to sharpen up some of these edges. And you can do that with supporting edge loops. So switch over to the bevel tool, make sure your shape is set to 1, segments 2, and that will give you some nice supporting edge loops either side of that existing selected edge, just like that. And you want to do that at all the key points basically. So anywhere there's like a defined bump or curvature, sharp edge almost, that's where you want to put these. So just work your way through this cylinder and add some supporting edge loop. That will really tighten up this shape for us. As you saw there, this is a really good technique. I use this technique all the time, and it really does help with like making easy models. And also it's non-destructive in that if you wanted to go back, because we've used a shape of 1 and it puts the edges either side of that selected edge, you can remove them and go back to your original shape easily, and then add those loops back in again. So it's a really good way of working, I find. So that's what I do, and it works really well for me. Obviously, do what you need to, what you think is right for you. So let's just carry on adding these bevels. And just double checking there that the segments are 2 and shape is 1. Whichever technique you use, whether it's Control B or using the bevel tool from the toolbar. I like to use the keyboard shortcuts because it's quicker and it's just less clicking really. So there you go. And also top end at the top and bottom, when you've done the bevel, add an inset to that face that's left behind in the middle there, and that just gives it a bit more structure and integrity, so we don't get any funny kind of triangulations going on there. Just like that. Really cool. And now you can see we're getting that shape now from the reference image. Just the neck there is a little bit too smooth. You can see there it should be a bit sharper. So let's go back into edit mode, into wireframe mode as well, so we can see our reference image. Let's just get rid of that timeline, we don't need that right now. And back into edit mode. Let's turn off the subdiv so I can see what we're doing. And I'm going to select these edges here. Just give them a little bit of a bevel. So Control B and just pull that out, just like that. You can see we've got some cuts in there, or some grooves. So I was going to add a couple of more edge loops here. And select both of those, and then again Control B, and this time scroll the wheel so we don't get any cuts, just a bevel, just like that, and that will give you the width of those grooves. And once you've done that, you can press Alt and E to select the extrude options, and select extrude faces along normals. And if you drag your mouse pointer down, hold the Shift key by the way, and that gives you finer control, and that will inset the faces. Turn on offset even, just to make sure they're nice and even when that's done. That looks cool. So that's looking good. If we put this subdiv back on, and that's almost there, but we've lost that edge hardness along the cuts we've just made, so we need to add a few more bevels for support. So back into edit mode, select all of these edges with Alt click and then Shift Alt click. Once you've got those, again Control B, this time scroll the wheel up once to get the one cut again, and just give it the bevel like that. So what about the inside edges then? Well, we could bevel those, but I've recently been using mean crease as a way to keep these edges sharp. So head over to the mean crease just on the right hand side until a value of 1. If you don't see that menu, press the N key, N for November, and that should appear on the right hand side there. There you go, that's looking pretty good. So just to give it a quick inspection, make sure everything looks as expected. And you can see there we've got like a separation of the different materials on the handle. So again, switch off the subdiv modifier so you can see what we're doing. Select that edge and then right click and select edge split. And to test that's actually worked, I'm going to alt click somewhere there and just press the G key to see. There you go, you've got a nice clean cut there now. So do the same at the other end, which is just about there, halfway up that slope there. So let's get back into edit mode, Control R to add a edge loop, place it in the right spot, and with that selected, right click and select edge split. So now we've got these two, effectively two elements separated, but they're not separate objects yet. They're still one object. So with that done, I'm going to switch to face mode, hover my mouse over I call it the marble, if that's what it is, some sort of crystal thing. So move the mouse pointer over that, and then select or press the L key. That will select linked elements. And then once you've got that, press the P key to separate it into its own object. So you can see there I've called it wand initially. And I'm going to rename this part wand marble. And you can see there, that's the bit that's left over. So let's isolate that into view by pressing the / or question mark key. And I'm just going to cap off these holes that we've got left behind. So as before, Control B and add an inset to the face. So we'll just quickly do that. Here we go. And then select that face and press I to inset and something like that. And do the same at the bottom now. So Alt click to select the edge, F to fill, Control B to bevel, and then select the face and then I to inset. So as you can see, really simple modeling techniques, but with the modifiers as well, that really helps to take it to the next level and give you a much smoother looking geometry. Right, with that done, let's look at this this marble element object and do the same thing here. So I'll just quickly speed through that because it's exactly the same as we've just done. So Control B and inset. And there you go. Right, so there's a few elements at the bottom there. It looks like there's a small pin or bolt holding the planet rings, as I like to call them. There is actually a planet in there, obviously not a full-scale planet, because that would be ridiculous. So I'm going to make a cylinder again and make it 8 sides. Trying to keep the sizes relative between the objects. So 16 sides for the cylinder. This one doesn't need 16 sides because it's way too small. So I'm going to use 8. And then I'm going to use the add cylinder options just to bring that into approximately where we want it. Of course, you can do that in edit mode anyway, and object mode just by transforming it and so forth. So that's roughly what we want. Very basic cylinder. Now we add a subdiv again. Set it the viewport levels to 2. You can see they're the same as before, same principle. Just bevel those edges to make them nice and rounded, and inset the faces as well. So lots of, as I like to call, rinse and repeat processes here. Okay, so we need this part to come out because it bolts into the lower handle, part of the handle. We don't need that top face as well, so we'll come to that in a second. I'm going to add a mean crease to this inside edge there, and add a supporting loop just to make it a bit more, give it some integrity really, and help the shading out. Let's get rid of that top face. We don't need that, it's going to be hidden from the angle. And it also messes up the subdiv as well. So that's gone. And that's it. I mean, it's a very simple shape to make, and it plays a good part. Yeah, remember to name your objects, and it will make life a lot easier later on, believe me. I made that mistake when I was learning Blender. I wasn't naming things properly as I went along. Cool, so with that pin done, or bolt as I've called it there, now my OCD wants me to move those vertices there, they line up flush against that handle, so I'm going to use vertex snapping for that. And vertex snapping on, you can hold down the control key to invoke the snapping, and then click on the blue axis to snap them vertically. And that's it. Doesn't have to be flush, of course. Do what you think is better. Right, the planet rings. I really like these shapes, they're really simple and really effective. Now this one, because it's larger than the bolt we just made, and it's more the size of the handle, I went back to using 16 vertices for the cylinder. And again, I'm going to use these add cylinder options to bring it into view. There it is. We need to rotate that on the 90 degrees on the x-axis, so it's facing us in the front viewport. And approximate the size. Now don't forget the width as well, the depth. So I'm going to make that about as wide as the bolt we just made. Otherwise you get the bolt sticking out from the edges, which is not going to be great. That's looking about right. Into edit mode, select either side of these faces and press the I to inset those. Let's give it some thickness. And once you've done that, you can right click and select bridge faces. And that will just make that into a tube-like thing. Let's add a subdiv again. Right click and smooth, shade smooth. And you probably guessed by now we're going to do the same thing as before. Select all these edges and add some bevels. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to playing Hogwarts Legacy. It looks really cool, and I would like to have started by now, but I've been a little bit busy with making videos, and of course, you probably don't know, but I also work full time, so I do try to squeeze these in when I can. Cool, so that's looking good. And the bolt is probably a little bit too long now, so let's switch into edit mode. Go over to the vertices and select all of those lower parts there. Just move them up so that's nice and snug. Like that. So far, pretty straightforward stuff, right? Nothing too complicated. But it does look cool. And you know, these techniques and that I use just seem to work, for me anyway. They work really well. And I do encourage you to work with as less geometry as possible, because it makes editing objects much easier than trying to work with hundreds of polygons and vertices. So yeah, let's copy this ring now, because we want the other ring as well now. So I'm going to rename that one as well, call it outer. Voila. Let's rotate that on the x-axis by 90. And bear in mind, you're doing this in object mode, so your rotation, as you can see there in the side panel, is not at 0 anymore, it's 180. As is the other ring actually, which is 90. So do bear that in mind, and that's okay for now. So this one needs to be wider, of course. So what I can do, because we just beveled it with this method that I use, we can select all of the edges that I added with the bevel and dissolve them, and that will take us back to the original tube cylinder. Let's select these as well. And I've selected the wrong one. Whoops. You probably spotted that as well. So just undo. Yeah, I've picked the wrong one. Just pick these inner ones here. And Control Delete will dissolve those edges. And then we can select these face loops. So press 3 on the keypad to get, not the keypad. Press 3 on your keyboard to select faces. And then Alt click to select the loop. And what I'm doing here, I'm scaling, but I don't want to scale it in the vertical axis, so that would be the Z. So when you press S, press Shift Z, and that will exclude the Z axis. Cool, right. Now I'm checking to see if it matches the width of the other ring. Perhaps I'm being a bit too approximate here, but that looks maybe a little bit thinner. So bring that out again. Again, scale and then Shift Z. I think that looks good. So let's just put those bevels back in now. Let's quickly do that. And turn on the subdiv as well on both of them. And the next part is just to make sure that we don't have any intersections between the first ring and the second ring. So I'm going to try and zoom in here and get a good angle and see if I can spot any intersections. Sometimes it helps to go right into the object and see if the other one's sticking through it. Doesn't seem to be here. I think I got lucky. Yep, there's a tiny gap there, and that's fine. That will do. Right. Shift S, by the way, brings up these snapping options, and from that you can select cursor to selected. I want to create the planet now in the center of those rings. So, as I say, just select one of the rings, Shift S, cursor to selected. That'll put it in the middle. Now I'm looking for the round cube. If you don't see that, enable it in your add-ons preferences. It's called Mesh Extra Objects. Well, it should be. You can always search for round cube and see if it comes up as well. It comes with a Blender, so you don't have to install anything or download anything. So yeah, added a UV sphere. It's not as basic as I would have usually liked, but through some testing I find that the default works just as well. It works better. This is what we're creating now, this little thing they call the planet. So give it the size that you think it should be, and of course right click and shade smooth. Let's rename that to Wand Planet. Lovely. You can see all our rotation and scale are the default. These ones are not. You could leave them like that, they don't really matter, but I think I ended up applying the rotation anyway. So you can press Ctrl A to do that and select rotation to apply that back to 0. And these are fine, the other objects. Let's add a subdiv to that as well. Round that off nicely. Okay, so far so good. Now we've got this pin or another bolt that goes right through the 2 rings and the planet. So let's work on that next. You can imagine it's very similar to the other one. In fact, I could have just copied that one. But again, because the 3D cursor's there anyway in the middle, I did another cylinder. 8 vertices is enough. There you go. And I want to use these options here just to get it roughly the right size and the right position. Let's switch to wireframe mode and front view. Let's move that there. Hold down the shift key to get finer control over these as you slide that in these fields. Can be tricky if you don't do that. Okay, so that's good enough. You can work with that. So let's go into edit mode. And like the first one we did, I'm going to make this a little bit thinner actually. So S. So let's make sure everything's selected, S and X, to restrict the scale. Let's isolate that by pressing the question mark key on your keyboard. Let's do another inset there. That's the bit that's going to extrude out, that's going to be poking through to the other side. And let's use a subdiv again. Shade smooth. Get rid of that last face as well, we don't need that in a minute. Let's add some bevels like we do. And let's get rid of that face at the end there. So select it and press delete. And that one again, a mean crease of 1. A mean crease is good, but it does look a little bit odd sometimes. So I'm going to go back and add 1 or 2 supporting edge loops just to tidy that up a little bit. Doesn't do any harm to do that, there's not much geometry there. So you could just copy this and flip it round and join the objects, but I'm going to add a, let's rename it first actually. I called that one pin, not bolt. Right, so I think I'm going to use a mirror modifier this time. But do you notice something that's going to throw this off? Can you guess what it is? There you go. We've got 90 degrees on the Y. Let's add a mirror modifier. You can see on the X it doesn't quite work because a rotation hasn't been applied. So we'll just do that quickly. Use the eyedropper to use the planet as our center of the mirror, basically. Right, so with that done, let's go into edit mode on this and select these vertices shift them over. Make sure clipping is on, by the way, otherwise it'll just go through itself. And that's it. That's our bolt done. It's a couple of tweaks though. I think it's a little bit too far out there. Let's bring it closer to the ring. We go back to the image I found. It looks a little bit larger than the one I've made, so I'll go back and edit this. Make it a little bit bigger. And we only want to scale the end part, not the shaft. So select all of these. Let's isolate it, make it easier to see. But we don't want that inner ring, the one there, the increased one, because that's going to scale, you know, the shaft bit. Just want those ones there. And now you can press. We don't want to scale it on all the axes like that. So press S, Shift X this time, so it doesn't scale on the X axis. That will do. That's looking better. Wow, unbelievable, right? We're 26 minutes into this video, and we've got the handle done, the planet, the rings, and 2 bolts. It's pretty good. And we might as well get rid of this edge here, because we applied the mirror modifier. We don't need to have that. Just apply it and dissolve that edge there, just to reduce some of the geometry down a little bit. Not a big difference at all. You don't have to do that. Now with these selected, you can see, maybe not so clearly on this image, but if I bring a video over, which I found on YouTube of course, where it goes through all of the wands in the game. So this is the grey one version, and you can see there the ring is at an angle. There's the blue one, that's the one we're going to be making. So, like I say, join me in part 2. It's going to be well worth it, and I think the results are excellent. So let's just rotate this by, I don't know, some angle, maybe 20 or something, or 25. I'm not really sure what the angle is, but I don't think it really matters that much. I'm going to use the 3D cursor to rotate it as its origin point. So that is bang in the middle. Hold down Control key for incrementals, angle snap. That will do. That looks pretty good. So we've got our handle done. Now let's think about the wood part of the wand as well. Now if you saw my Chainsaw Man video, you probably recognize the same techniques used in this video, where I made the cables that run through for the neck on Chainsaw Man. We can use a similar process or technique for this one. So what I've done, I'm going to do now is add the cylinder again. Let's just zoom in here, and let's just change these to roughly the same size as one of those wood, don't want to call it branches, but one of those 3 bits of wood there intertwined. So make it roughly the size of one of those, and I gave it 16 vertices. Probably a little bit too much, but I wanted this to be nice and smooth, and give it a little bit of height. I think I ended up going for 0.25. Obviously that would depend on the scale of your reference image when you brought it in. It should be the same, but it might not be. Let's delete these faces, top and bottom, we don't need those. So in edit mode, just get rid of those. Wand Wood seems like a good name, let's go for that. And let's shade it smooth as well. Much better. Right, now we need a bit more geometry vertically, so that when it does twist and spiral upwards, Blender has a bit more geometry to work with. That's probably a bit too many, but it's fine. 5 or 6 is more than enough. So, with that done, let's have a look at it from the top view. Let's add before that, let's go to top view, I think. And you won't see it because it's so thin, obviously, so we need to go to wireframe mode to see that. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you're in edit mode, not object mode. Is really important. Select everything and move them away from the center of origin, the point of origin. Again, you have to do this in edit mode, otherwise it's not going to work. If you do it in object mode, the origin point will move with it, so that's not going to work. So let's just offset that a little bit. Shift D to duplicate all of that, and move it ever so close to the other one, but not overlapping at this point. Duplicate it again, and again move it, just so we've got a tiny gap between them. Something like that. Okay, so we've got 3 cylinders now in that one object, with the center right in the middle. And that's what we want. And again, not again, but make sure that your rotation and scale are at the defaults again, because otherwise your modifiers will be really wacky once you apply them. First of all, let's add an array modifier, so we can duplicate this vertically. So the factor of x is by default 1. Let's change that to 0 and put the factor of 1 to the z-axis. So we want it to go up and down. And increase the numbers. Whoops, not that one. Increase the counts so it matches roughly the top of the wand. Now we've got a lightsaber, so that's cool, but not what we want. Or a triple lightsaber. Let's move it up a little bit in object mode because it's almost just shy of the top. Okay, that's looking good so far. Let's click merge, and next we add a simple deform modifier, and twist is what we want. We want it to be on the z-axis, not the x. You can see there, if you look at it from this view, you can see there's a slight twist to it. All we need to do now is just increase the angle. Let's do 360 times 2, 720. That looks decent. That's looking pretty good. But the tricky part is, well, not even that tricky, is making the top part pointy and thinner and not so twisty. To be fair, I tried this several ways, and one of them was to use vertex weight paint, but it wasn't quite working the way I expected, so I found another way to do it, and that's the technique I'm going to show you now. Right, make backups, right? Otherwise, you could make a mistake, and then let's turn all that off as well so you don't see it, select it, or render it, the backup. So always work on a backup object if you're going to do some drastic changes, because if they don't work out, you can just get the other object back. Okay, so first of all, let's work on these top parts where they've got these holes. So, like before, select the edge and press F to fill it. That'll create a face. Just round these off a little bit, like a dome shape at the top. So with that selected, I'm going to press I to inset, and we get those, and press I again, and just bring these up. Let's go to the side view actually first, or the front view. Then select the other rings, edge loops, then bring those up as well. You can see there we're getting this dome-like effect. It can be as pointy as you like. So with that, I'm going to make these ones a little bit smaller as well. And to do that, make sure you're using individual origins, not medium point. Something like that. And then I think these ones can be a little bit smaller as well. So it's a little bit more rounded. Okay, I think that's enough. Okay, one more then. So just a little bit more. There you go. Cool. Now we've got breadsticks. Right, now select these top faces. Here's the trick, right? You want to scale these down, but not like one at a time, obviously. That would just be ridiculous. So we're going to use proportional editing. So turn that on. Turn on connected only. Well, that doesn't make a huge difference here. And switch to your front view so you can see the whole wooden part in the viewport. It can be a bit tricky when it's that thin. The reason you want to do that is because you want to see the area of influence, which is just come up there. You can see that circle. And if you scroll your wheel, that will increase and decrease the area of influence. So Don't go too far because we don't want to scale it at the bottom of the wood, just at the top, and it works its way down. And we've still got individual origins, remember, turned on. So that's good. That's the effect we want. But obviously then they're not very close together. We've got this huge gap now. So it's an easy fix now. Now I was thinking about scaling these from that, but that's not going to work. I don't want to make them any smaller. What you want to do is move these closer and keep the proportional editing on. That's really important. Again, you want the whole thing to move along with it. I put the cursor there just so I can see a point of origin really. Don't need it, but so I'm going to select that top face with proportional editing on, remember, and just move it closer to the center. Not right in the center, but closer. Now at this point, you'll notice I'm intersecting these. That's fine. In fact, it nicely makes the top end look much better. And we'll make it even better in a minute. So don't be afraid to do that. So you can see that's worked out really well. And the last thing I want to do is, rather than having all of these three exactly the same height, which is fine actually, there's nothing wrong with that. Here it is with the twist, and that's exactly what we want. That's the effect that we wanted. So give it a quick look around, see how that looks. And again, the top part is absolutely fine, you can leave it like that. But wait, there's more. As they say in marketing. Right, so I'm going to select one of these top faces. Just bring them down so they're different levels. So let's start with one and one. Proportional editing is on, of course. Let's just bring that down a little bit. Again, I want to see the whole thing in the viewport, so if there's any mistakes happening, I can spot them while I'm doing this. So I'll bring it down a little bit. And then we can select another one and bring that halfway down. Now we've got this kind of stepping effect, which gives the wand more of a pointy look really. So just bring that down approximately halfway. And that's enough. You can even move it in further. If you think it's sticking out too much, you can just bring that in a little bit more. Something like that. And then, obviously, inspect your work. Make sure everything looks good. So I think it does. I'm really happy with that. Let's turn our reference image back on. And have a look at this part here, because I don't know if you notice there's a slight curve on the underside of that. So, back into edit mode. And all we need to do is add a loop cut there. So Control R, right click to leave it there. Don't forget to turn those off and go back to medium point and scale that in just a little bit so we get that nice curve. And that's all that needs. Perfect. Right, the next step are these lovely grooves, which are actually, I don't even think they're normal maps. I'm not sure. Maybe they're physically modeled in the game, but they could be normal maps. But I'm going to model these into the marble. And this might seem a little bit wacky and a bit tricky. Again, make a backup, please, in case you make a mistake and you need to go back. So let's get into this object in edit mode. And there's a technique that I like. I've seen a few times, which is really cool. But we need more geometry to work with, so I want to add a handful of loop cuts there. That's enough, I think. Just, you get these rough squares from top to bottom. Now you want to select all of those faces. Make sure you're in wireframe, by the way, so you can select the front and the back faces. You want to select all of these faces, apart from the top and bottom ones. So these ones there. Just make sure that everything is selected like that, and then right click and select poke faces, and that will then create that. Then go to face, tries to quads. And by magic, Blender then creates this kind of wraparound pattern, which is really nice. But it hasn't quite worked down here for some reason, so we're going to manually clean that up. It's okay, it looks messy, but it's not. And you can see if I do this, the faces should continue that way, all the way to that bit there. But they're not. So all you got to do is select every other edge in a step pattern. Actually, I noticed later it's in a step pattern. So select those. If you dissolve them with Control Delete, oops. Oh no, that's right actually. You can see there, now you've got the face ring going all the way from top to bottom, which is what you want. So I'm going to do the rest now, but I'll go fast forward this because it did take a short while. So systematically go around, dissolve the edges, and here's that step pattern that you recognize to make sure that you're getting the right ones. There we go, to speed through that. Almost done. And finally, voila, done. Perfect. Have a quick look around, make sure we haven't missed anything or made a mistake. So now let's select all of the faces that are going to be the grooves. So hold down the control key, sorry, not the control key, the alt key, and click, and leave a gap of 3, and then click again. Assuming you've used 16-sided cylinder, as I did, you can do the same thing as you see there. And that's good, but we need to select the ends as well. So let's just hold down the Shift key and add to our selection. Yeah, as you can see there, with low polygon objects, this is a lot easier and quicker to do than something with 32 sides or 64 or even 128. Keep it simple, it really does help. There we are, all done. With all of those selected, press I to inset, just a little bit. And the reason I'm doing that is it gives us more supporting edge loops for later on. Make some tweaks in the inset faces panel there if you need to. Inset it again. So that's 2 insets we've done now. Now at this point you might want to add these to a vertex group, just so you don't have to reselect them again later. I didn't do that unfortunately. But anyway, we'll come back to that later on. So in the meantime, there are some glitches that came about because of that second inset. You can see there we've got some really skewed up geometry, which isn't great. So I'm going to select some vertices and edges and press G twice. And by pressing G twice, you're effectively sliding your selection along existing geometry, or the edges in this case. So I'm going to work my way around and press GG and slide that along the existing edges. Now another way to do this, actually probably a better way, is to select the whole edge loop that goes all the way around and then scale it in the Z-axis to a factor of 0. And that'll just flatten all of those out in seconds, not even seconds. And I probably should have done that. I don't know why I didn't think of it. Let's do the same at the bottom here. So just go around anything that's extreme, just tidy them up a little bit. I think we're almost done now. Great, so that's all done. Have a quick look around again, make sure you haven't missed anything. So yeah, I've got to select all these faces again, so that's why I mentioned earlier assign them to a vertex group, so you can just select them with one click now. But I've got to go through them again manually, unfortunately. So I want to make you watch me do that again for the third time. How nice am I? Goodness me. Thankfully it's quick. There you go. Awesome. Yep, got them all, just like Pokemon. And Alt-E to extrude faces along normals. Alt-E. And bring that in just a little bit. And that creates the actual grooves that we wanted. Offset even, make sure that's turned on. And now press Ctrl plus to grow the selection. And now we can add a vertex group, hit assign, really important, hit the assign key, and rename the vertex group to something a bit more meaningful. I'm going to call mine metal area. As you'll notice from the video that this part of the grooves have like a metallic look to them, and it slightly goes over the top of those grooves a little bit, overhangs a little bit. And now I'm looking for a bad topology because that inset, sorry, the extrude that I noticed there's a few anomalies, shall we say. So doesn't look too bad actually in hindsight, but maybe these don't need to be fixed, but I'll leave that to your discretion. But if I turn off the subdiv, you can see here we've got some rather messy geometry going on. You can't really make heads or tails of that, like what's going where. I mean, you can, but it's really quite messy. So I decided to fix them and use the same technique as before, edge slide or vertex slide. That's all you need to do. Now I think there's a better way to do it, not a better way even, but a different way. There's more ways to do this handle than what you see here. This is just the way I found it worked for me, and maybe there's other ways to do this as well that you can try and experiment with. So here we are on the second part, just edge sliding and vertex sliding. To give you the idea of what you need to do. So I've just cut all of that out because it's too much to sit and watch. And I've done all of that now on top and bottom, and subdiv back on, and it's all looking good. Now make a backup. Please make a backup, because you might make a mistake here, like I did. And before we crack on with the stars, let's just add a bit more interest to this top part. I just wanted a bit more of an extrusion on this part here, so I'm going to extrude that up a little bit. And you've probably guessed, add some bevels. Not a mean crease this time because I wanted to flow as one object. And then add an inset on that top face like we did before. Give it some more strength and integrity. That'll do. Okay, with that done, let's tackle these lovely stars, which you can see are the same as the grooves. They're inset inside the handle, and they're different sizes and stuff, but you know, let's see how we get on. I've got a couple of methods to show you. I'm going to start obviously with one method first and see how that goes. What I'm going to try to do now is use the existing geometry and make the stars from that. So let's see how I try to do that. So I select the faces there and press I to inset them. And I'm doing that because I want a bit more geometry to work with, basically, and try to make a shape, a star shape out of what we have here. So let's make that middle face a little bit smaller. And I'm going to edge slide again, so press GG, bring these in closer. We've got some really close geometry there, like really thin polygons. I'll fix that in a minute. Just want to work on the overall shape first. That perhaps can be a little bit smaller again. Let's switch to vertex mode and slide these along so we get a bit more space between them. Looks a bit nicer. Okay, that's good. Now before I do that, let's add a Control R to add a loop cut just in there, and again make that a little bit smaller. Now that we've made that a little bit smaller, let's bring in these edges a bit closer to the center. And to bring these outer ones, I'm going to add the 3D cursor here, the selection, so Shift S, cursor to selected, and change your manipulation point to 3D cursor. Select these outer vertices, the pointed parts basically of the star, and just scale them in towards the 3D cursor. Now if you pivot round to the side, you can see we've got some holes, not holes, but indents or dents across the surface. So I'm going to select these and just move them out a little bit. Something like that is fine. Don't forget we've got a subdiv modifier as well. So this isn't like mission critical stuff. And I probably should have moved the next one along as well, which I didn't for some reason. Let's put the cursor back to world origin. You can see that one's got an indent, but I didn't move it. Oh dear, never mind. Live and learn. I'm going to bring these in some more. Using the slide method again. So slide along one and then slide along the other one to get it in the middle, roughly. Okay, click that face, Control plus to grow it. Oops, as an edge loop again, for support again. And select the face, Control plus to grow it. Now we want to extrude those along the normals, so Alt E, bring up the menu, and move the mouse down a little bit. And use the options if you need to in the bottom left. Okay, I think that depth is good enough, similar to the grooves. Okay, not the worst I've ever seen. We can do better. So I did try this again on the next part down on the handle, but before I did that, I actually started trying to tidy it up a little bit more. So some more edge sliding. Maybe some vertex sliding here and there, trying to sharpen up this star. So yeah, you can see them just pushing around and sliding stuff. So I did that again, as I said, and on the next part down. I then decided to try another method. So I'll just speed this up quickly. I think this part here should be way smaller than I actually made it. But I was trying to mitigate the stretching of these faces. Probably wouldn't have been a problem, to be honest. I should have just made them smaller. But anyway. So with that, like I said, I did the same thing on the part there, just beneath. As you can see that I've jumped forward there. And the reason I've done that is because I kind of wanted to do something else rather than try and do this everywhere manually. So I added a plane and then rotate it on the X, it's facing you, apply the rotation, in edit mode, scale it down, and then object mode, move it around. Basically get it to roughly the size of the star shape, or the area the star sits in anyway. And once you've got that there, right click on it and subdivide it twice. And that gives us the same amount of faces that we had to work with on the handle. You probably figure out we're going to use this as a transplant or a donor. So let's inset those faces like we did before. So basically everything we did on the handle, we're doing on a flat plane now, which is easier to work with because you don't have to worry about curvature and rounded shapes. So it's much easier. Things like this just work. Make it smaller. No. But first you notice we've got to rotate it by 45 degrees. Again, do this in edit mode, right? Don't do it in object mode. If you do, apply the rotation. So now the star's facing the right way. Let's add the H loop for support. So I'll bring that in a bit closer actually. Select this face, grow the selection, and then, in fact, I'll do that first actually. We'll extrude those in. Add the subdiv modifier, set it to 2, right click, shade smooth. And yeah, that's looking better than the one on the handle, right? So let's go with this method. Let's try this. Make a copy of it. So Shift D, move it to the side. Now that we know that works visually, let's flatten this back to what it was a second ago. So without the extrusion basically. So make sure vertex snapping is on. And move it over, hold down the control key and snap it to that. And select all the vertices and merge by distance. And that'll give you that flat plane again. In fact, you could also select all of them and press SY0. And that will flatten it all first and then merge the vertices. So with that done, copy that again and position this like you would do a plaster over a cut. Move that over the area you want the star to be in. Let's put it up here because there's already a star there. Let's try and see if this works. Object mode, this is fine, not in edit mode. Just rotate it so it's facing that surface a bit better. Yeah, can you guess what the method we're going to try is? 10 points if you guess right. Let's switch to wireframe mode. Heck, I'll give you 1,000,000 points. There you go, shrink wrap. If you guess that, you get 1,000,000 points. And let's use the eyedropper, select the handle as our object to shrink wrap to. And that works well. Happy with that. Let's turn wireframe off and on again, because that's what I do. And now we've done that, let me just move this away a little bit. Let me set that to outside, and it's gone like that again. So bear with me. There's a point to my method to my madness. So if I bring that out a little bit, what I want to do is I want you to see all these points here that we have. So all of these, they match the same number of points we have on the handle, right? So we're going to merge this into that. So, but first we need to make this one object. You can't do them as separate objects, right? So let's make the hole where this is going to go. And whoops, the shrink wrap modifier is trying to do its best, but obviously that geometry is now gone. So undo that. Apply the shrink modifier first. Really important. Apply the shrink modifier. And then delete those faces behind. So select, Control plus, delete faces. Voila. I've got to stop saying that. And now we can go into edit mode, but these are separate objects, right? So make sure you do, there you go, you can't do it. So we need to make sure there's one object. So with the star selected, select the handle second, and then press Ctrl J to join them. It's important you select the handle last when you do this. And now all I'm doing is selecting the first vertex and the second one and merging at last. So I'm going to work my way around and merge these to the existing handle vertices. Just speed that up. Some of these might be hidden behind, so take care to look through either in X-ray or wireframe mode to spot any glitches. And in fact, I made that mistake because you're going to see in a second that I missed one. But before we do that, let's extrude this. Alt E, bring it in a little bit. In fact, let's bring that in a bit more as well, if we can. But not yet. Right, let's turn on the subdiv and turn off wireframe. And there's my mistake. So I missed the vertex. So as I said, they could be behind. So pick that one, move it up so we can see it. And just merge that with the last one there. Lovely. That's looking a lot neater than the other one, the first attempt. So now my suggestion is to use this method to create the stars. You could actually sculpt this as well. That would work with the dynamic topology turned on. But do bear in mind, that's going to add a lot of geometry to your handle. And you've got the subdiv turned on as well. So you may end up with hundreds of thousands of polygons for what is really simple shapes. So yeah, with that done, I'm going to use the same method for all of the stars going across everything. So to do that, I'm going to first remove these previous attempts of the stars, because we need this to be flat, remember, so we can do the shrink wrap. I'm going to select these and delete them. That leaves a big hole, so Alt click the edge and then select the opposing vertices, press the J key to join them, and that will start building up this grid of faces. Now that might be okay, but if you spin round, you can see there we've got this indentation again. So let's undo that, and there's a better way to do this. Let's undo that, get back to the hole, and let's go up at the to the menu where it says face, and there's an option there called there's an option there called grid fill. Let's choose that. And that's filled it in for us, and it's made a much better job than just filling it and then cutting it like I did previously. So let's go with that. Do the same thing here. Select, delete, select the edge loop, face, grid fill. Lovely. Now we can do the same patchwork we did a minute ago with the other star. So pause the video here, do that, work your way around it, and I then realized actually you don't have to do all of it. You just do a few of them and then copy it, separate them as objects by pressing the P key. Because this is symmetrical all the way around, right? It's the same thing. So I figured if we just move the 3D cursor somewhere in the middle, close by, so we can see the gizmo, and use that as our pivot point, I can rotate these 90 degrees and they'll be in exactly the same position, or where they should be on the side and the back side. So I did that a few times and then made the holes where those ended up and joined the objects together and then merged the vertices again. So you've seen this before a few moments ago. Same techniques, same methods, and this way you don't have to do shrink wrap and all that stuff. You can just copy the whole thing, rotate it 90 degrees, and then join it together and merge it. So I did that for the whole thing. You can do more than one at the same time as well, which is what I did. So there you go. I added some random stars. I didn't really bother with changing the sizes too much. So there you have it, the final model for the wand. I hope you enjoyed that, and please make sure you come back for part 2. For now, thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in part 2. Take care, bye for now.